IgniteCDA, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also would have to say that it is very strange seeing you, Danny, sitting in that chair.
It's very nice over this, from this perspective.
But
Thanks for taking over, Scott.
That we can't thank you enough for the amount of good that you've done while you've sat in this chair for all of us and for this community. So for that, we thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Appreciate it. And now it's time for public comment. If anybody has any public comment.
Good afternoon. My name is David Lyons. In September 2009, the Gagnons sold the flea market to the housing company for $325,000. Your agency was not involved except as a spectator. In December 2009, an agreement was drawn up whereby you would pay the housing company $100,000. You'd get the flea market land, and they'd keep the building and get a right of first refusal. That agreement, however, was not consummated. It was subsequently changed, deliberately, with the involvement of lawyers. That changed agreement was described to you at your February 2010 meeting. You pay $100,000, you get the land and building, and the housing company still gets the right of first refusal. That changed agreement was approved, signed by everyone, and documents recorded accordingly. There was never any written partnership agreement between you and either the housing company or IHFA, and there was never any disposition and development agreement between you about Midtown. The right of first refusal by its own terms expired at the end of 2012. So on January 1, 2013, after that expired, the housing company and IHFA had no right or interest in the flea market. You owned it all. That's where things stand today. With the benefit of hindsight, IHFA today no doubt regrets entering into that contract in February 2010. But in the adult world, we have to live by the contracts we make. We don't get a do-over. At your August meeting, Mr. Hunter said IHFA is getting out of Midtown. Yet on September 22, Mr. Burns sent him a draft agreement under which you would sell the flea market land and building to IHFA for $100,000. No appraisal, no auction or competitive bidding process, no reason given for any urgency. Just Mr. Burns setting a $100,000 sale price in what is an obvious attempt to undo the February 2010 contract that IHFA now regrets entering into. That property was bought with taxpayer money. It's owned by your agency free and clear, and it was assessed last July at over $187,000. If you want to sell it, there's plenty of time to have an appraisal and an auction, which is what you did quite successfully with the last property you sold over on 7th or 8th Street. We've been told that you are fiduciaries for the public, meaning you have a legal duty to act prudently and solely in the public's interest. Yet under Mr. Burns's proposed agreement, you'd be acting like a fiduciary or representative of IHFA. And the public, the people whose interests you're supposed to be representing, they get thrown under the bus. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Next item is I'd entertain a motion for approval of minutes for the last month's board meeting. Enter any corrections or comments?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And then also then I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of the special call board meeting, the budget workshop we had.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? It was a good meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion also carries. Is Ron here for his presentation?
He's right over there.
Oh, there he is. Next, we'll have a presentation from Ron Ayers about Collaborate. Collaborate. Go ahead, if you'd introduce yourself. And
I'm Ron Ayers. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm excited about the project that we'll have a discussion about today, and I hope that you are as well. I've called the project Collaborate, which is at once a couple things. It's obviously a wordplay on Coeur d'Alene, the name Coeur, which is, we know, is the word for heart in French. It's also a combination using the word collaborate, which is, all of that is the spirit behind this project. It's a 200,000 square foot land area, mixed use, LEED certified, solar powered, Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott anchored entrepreneurial and economic development focused hospitality center project on Northwest Boulevard in Coeur d'Alene. I've identified my unique definition of a collaborator using my spelling as an associate in an activity or endeavor or sphere of common interest. That's actually a definition of collaborate. And then I've added supporting entrepreneurs and economic development in the greater Coeur d'Alene area to finish out the word collaborator. Again, the spirit behind this is by referring your friends or family, business associates, sports teams, hobby club, or class reunion to the Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott in Coeur d'Alene, you are directly supporting specific organizations that are involved in making our area a better place for entrepreneurs, startups, and economic development in general. Collaborators know that we funnel a percentage of our profits to these organizations that need help with funding, and by staying in our hotel, they are helping to support our startup ecosystem. I've approached this project with a strategy in mind, which was we're starting with an A location. It's a high-profile location on Northwest Boulevard. It was deserving, in my opinion, of a highest and best use project. I come from a hotel ownership, operation, development background, and so I've always had an eye of a hotel going here. The strategy was to secure the Marriott franchise, which I've done, and then assemble an A-team to help design, develop, and build the property. We've done that, led by Miller Stauffer, Dick Stauffer at Miller Stauffer Architects. Vanderbilt Construction is a general contractor. They are A-team as well. They have built many of the hotels in our region, as well as a division of their company owns and operates hotels. On down the line to the engineers and consultants, it's truly an A-team project that I think will do very well. The project is located at what is currently known as the Garden Motel. It's at 1808 Northwest Boulevard. At least the Garden Motel takes up the lion's share of the project, the land area. It's outlined in red there and encompasses several parcels that have been assembled and provided the basis for this project. As I say, it's currently the Garden Motel. It's just under 200,000 square feet. 4 acres of that is C-17. The entire project lies within the Lake District of IgniteCDA Urban Renewal District. To change this 5th bullet point, we actually, as of Friday, are approved with our building permit as of Friday. That's a big day. And with IgniteCDA partnership and participation, we will start demolition and site work. Again, to summarize, we're at 4.5 acres, Class A location with a hospitality focus. We've secured the franchise agreement for 112-room Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott, which is the anchor for the project. It's a 4-story, 65,000 square foot building, hotel with swimming pool and conference room. All parking is above ground, off-street. It will be LEED certified, energy efficient by the U.S. Green Building Council. There will be a solar array on the roof, solar roadways, the Sandpoint company that we have grown to know will have an installation in sidewalk and parking area, which I'm very excited about. Up to 2 acres of the frontage on Northwest Boulevard will be available and utilized for restaurant and/or retail pads. And the entire project will completely redevelop and beautify this location. Again, we have a rendering of the hotel. This is a site plan. The hotel is shown there mostly to your right. It is rectangular shaped, going east and west. The entrance to the hotel faces south, entering off of Davidson. Thank you. This is Davidson Avenue. Up here is Emma. Over here, this is Northwest Boulevard. Okay, so this hotel, 4-story building, surrounded by parking. These are conceptual. These are the pads I referred to. These are conceptual buildings. Some entire site. This is a dividing line. It's also a parking structure. As you enter from Northwest Boulevard, or from one of the, what it would be the lower portions of the property, you would, and from up here, or from the This slide demonstrates the boundaries of the Lake District, as well as a bit of an idea of the mission of IgniteCDA. I've kept this in mind as we have come forward with this project, tried to develop it with this in mind. I think we've accomplished that. In the application process for IgniteCDA, there are 12 points of criteria for review. Without reading each one of these individually, I would summarize it to say I believe it has a strong answer to each one of these criteria. Fundamentally, it is highest and best use, therefore it greatly increases the property value from what it is to what it will be, therefore generating a very large tax increment. It will employ over 125 people during construction, which will take a better part of a year, and the resulting project will create more than 70 full-time jobs. In getting to the participation and partnership request for IgniteCDA, the site has 50 feet of elevation from Northwest Boulevard as you travel east. From Northwest Boulevard to this point, there's 50 feet of elevation. It goes up the hill. In order to place the hotel in this location, therefore allowing for the highest and best use, again, for development of the pads on Northwest Boulevard, therefore creating the highest and best hospitality use for this site, greatest benefit for the community, for our visitors, for the sponsored entities, for Collaborate. I feel that this is the best and highest and best project for this site. But in doing so, we have to deal with the elevation. Dealing with the elevation requires, on this project, a removal of approximately 20,000 cubic yards of material, which is, in truckload terms, that's well in excess of 1,000 truckloads. In doing so, much of this will come from this area here. There's a retaining wall drawn into this diagram that's about 20 feet tall, down from the surface level of Emma to the parking level of the hotel parking lot. In addition, there is currently, as you look at this, there is a street right here. As you go back to the current site, there's an 8-inch water main. It's also a big project as a result of the hotel is going to go right over the top of it. The water main will be moved west so that there's free access to it once the hotel is built and the project is built. Those two things take up, in all of the demolition of the existing streets, surfaces, curbs, et cetera, on both sides of this project, take up the lion's share of the request, as you will see outlined here. I grouped it into 4 basic areas: the existing property demolition and cleanup, the Emma Avenue improvements, which again get into demoing what is there, removing the water main, replacing what is there, shoring up Emma so that this 20-foot retaining wall does not weaken the street in any way, and create the site ready to accept the hotel. Similar improvements need to go on in Davidson Avenue to the south border of the property, and then right-of-way improvements, including street trees, landscaping, and stormwater management. Will come up a total work from the bid from Vanderbilt Construction of $1,255,000. Here we have an outline of the project budget, showing the equity in the property, the hard costs of construction, soft costs, and furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and working capital, the total project cost of $15 million. And then the financing capital stack, we have the owner equity, IgniteCDA tax increment financing, and then anticipating bank financing roughly of $11 million, for a total, again, of $15 million. As we know, in tax increment financing, there's a calculation, there's an establishment of existing parcels and what they are assessed at. These 7 parcels here total in a current assessed value of just over $2 million. At build out, the estimated assessed value of the project, the hotel, at $15 million as demonstrated, and then the remaining land and restaurant and buildings, et cetera, will be at least $7 million for a total project. Anticipated assessed value of $22 million. Doing the math here, the difference between the $2 million and the $22 million is just under 2 at a roughly 1.4% levy rate. That's an estimated annual property tax increase of $280,000 times 4.5 years, which goes from a rough, the 4.5 years is using a rough idea of an opening date of July of 2017 to the sunset of the Lake District in 2021. I'll entertain any questions.
Questions, Mr. Ayers?
So some of the other hotels in the area, and particularly that area, the assessed values are 5 to 7 million. So I'm just trying to understand the $15 million, what you're gauging that on.
I think there are actually one at least that's at $9 million as well. This exercise, I'm going by cost, as demonstrated earlier. The exercise in trying to calculate this requires a look into the future. And that look into the future, 4.5 years from now, will they be assessed at that amount? I don't know. I've used the values of, and actually the cost. It doesn't even reflect what I would consider the value, but the cost to arrive at that $22 million figure. Using the examples that you mentioned, it would be assessed at lower than that.
Mr. Chairman? So, Ron, a couple questions. The Spring Hill, I think it's Spring Hill Suites, is that a Marriott property as well?
Yes.
So on the hierarchy of their sort of quality of facilities? Where does Fairfield Inns sort of sit versus Spring Hill Suites?
Well, on quality specifically, I think we'll at least be as good as them as far as quality goes. But to anticipate your, I'm kind of joking. To anticipate your question, that's an all-suite property where we are an inn and suites. So all 118 rooms on that property are suites. It's a little bit bigger. The rooms are bigger and they're outfitted a bit differently. Some of the common areas are a little bit bigger. I think if you look and compare, an easiest way to I think, answer your question in addition to that is if you were to compare rates, chain to chain, location by location in general, Spring Hill Suites would be a little bit higher.
Okay. And then, Ron, can you go back to the your request screen, what you're requesting, how you're building your request from Ignite? So just to go through that, we did this, talked about this at Finance, but so the initial bullet point, demolition and hauling, that's basically to make the site not excavated to your elevation needs, but at least sort of cleaned up.
Correct.
To build something up.
Correct. It's tear what's down, tear what's there, down, and haul it away.
Including, and then the tree would be the same.
Right.
So the third bullet of 150, that's where you get into sort of changing the grade elevation to meet your specific project needs. Is that
Correct.
a fair statement?
Correct.
Okay. And the same with grading and site work?
Yes.
And those all would take place within the boundaries of your property ownership, correct?
Yes.
Maybe some trees might be, maybe you get outside a little bit, I suppose, but most of it at least would be in the property.
That's correct.
Okay. And then down on the Emma Avenue improvements where you have to build a retaining wall, that is the retaining wall inside or outside the property line? Do you know? Do you know that yet?
As it's drawn, it is inside the property line. So, to answer that question, yes.
And I don't know, this might raise a question whether the city would even approve something on the city right away like that. I don't know. But just a comment. One of my concerns the other day at Finance was how much we expend for a site within the boundary lines that accommodates for a particular type of development versus, cleaning up deteriorated conditions on the property and getting it to a point where you could actually build it. And an example I raised was the Parkside, where they all wanted to have more help excavating for the underground garage, and we didn't go there. So I just think it's a point of consideration for our board as to what extent we would want to get into those kinds of costs as part of our any approved assistance. Appreciate that, Ron. I know that.
Thank you.
I heard your answer. I think his answer, it goes to the quality of the development and the kind and in the increment that you create. There are some arguments on the other side.
Right. Thank you.
Tonight's just information sharing. There's no board action that's going to happen tonight, so it'll happen next month.
Mr. Chairman? And can you explain a little bit more about how the collaboration space or collaborate space would work in synergetically with the hotel?
I can't hear her.
Oh.
You got to say awake.
Oh.
Busted.
Yeah.
You heard
Especially
me.
that word.
So how does the collaborate space work in synergy with the hotel? I worried about it.
The collaborate model actually works with and because of the hotel. That's why the hotel is the first piece of, it's the anchor and it's the first piece of the project. And really in terms of identifying costs and so forth, it's first. And that is where the support for the collaborate model comes from, is from the revenue from the hotel. As far as a collaborate space, which would go on the corner of Emma and Northwest Boulevard, that would come later. That would come after the hotel. And that would create more of a home for, potentially for, some of the entities, organizations, nonprofits, and so forth that we would support.
So revenue from the hotel will generate, okay.
Yes. It's designed to be a self-sustaining model that helps the hotel, helps the entity that we sponsor, and vice versa.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Very much. Definitely would put a new look to that section of Northwest Boulevard. It's needed.
Yeah, I think the Garden was a nice motel in the 50s, probably.
In finance, I was saying I stayed there for 6 months back in like '79, and it was pretty new back then. So it
Oh,
was-
wasn't bad then either, huh? No.
Committee reports. Finance.
For finance, I will take the lead in Commissioner Arman's absence. Last month was a fairly straightforward month for both districts on the financial side. The Lake District on the balance sheet experienced a $94,666 decrease in cash assets from August, mainly due to the transfer of $88,725 to the City of Coeur d'Alene Arts Commission. That's our yearly transfer of public art funds. No real action on receivables or fixed assets, no changes. The other assets are our Washington Trust bond reserve, and had an interest increase of $86 for the month. On the liabilities and fund balance on the balance sheet, we have a decrease of $5,821 on the mortgages and notes payable line item, which represents a normal debt service month for our obligations. And everything else was unchanged on the balance sheet. On the P&L for the Lake District received $11,933 in tax increment revenue from the county in September, and all the other expenses are in line with the normal operating month. Any questions on the Lake District?
Mr. Chair. Tony, in going through their audit, do they book an amount of receivables, in other words, past due property taxes that are owed? So there is an amount that's owed to the district. Because I'm thinking, fast forward to 2021, and when it comes time to close the district, there's still going to be funds that are going to flow into the district even after that, because those are through 2021. So those will flow through.
Correct.
2022.
Or later, yeah.
Or sometime in small amounts.
Conceivably, 3 more years until they could issue a tax deed.
Right, okay. For the River District on the balance sheet, the River District experienced a $46,841 decrease in cash assets from August month end. That's mainly once again due to the transfer of art funds to the City of Coeur d'Alene Arts Commission of $44,106. And all other parameters on the liabilities and fund balance were unchanged for the month, except for a 2% credit due to arts line item. On the River District P&L, the River District received $4,604 in tax increment revenue from the county in September. And all the other P&L line items are pretty much standard for an operating month, 50% cost share. So pretty quiet months, other than the transfer of art fund dollars to the City of Coeur d'Alene
That happens annually.
And that's once again at the board's discretion. We're currently at 2% accrual rate. Moving on to payables. We have a payable of $1,086.35 to Elam and Burke for legal counsel, for general legal counsel, and for some insights on bond refunding and the Midtown draft memorandum of understanding review. and we have $2,438.50 payable to Holly Troxel for general legal counsel, as well as the work on the Midtown Modern Theater Initiative, as well as the Douglas easement down by Belle Reve. We have a payable of $1,009.80 payable to Miller Stauffer Architects for the work on the parking facility conceptual designs and analysis. This is the final payment of our agreed to amount of $3,900 for that exercise. And finally, you'll see a payment to Walsh-Comer Engineers for the Southeast Way roadway reconstruction project design effort of $38,250. We have a commitment of $250,000 for this design effort. So as you can see, as we track costs, we still have a ways to go to consummate that deal. So all in total we have $42,784.65 in payables. To approve.
Thanks, Tony. I'll entertain a motion then to approve the financials and the payables.
I'll move that we approve the financial report and the payables for the month.
Second. Moved in second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. That
Also,
motion
Mike.
carries.
Finally, I'd just like to hand out to the board members the quarterly report that I prepared each quarter for the board to review on the financial front. And if you can just review at your convenience and let me know if you have any questions as we usually work this issue, I'd be happy to entertain questions you might have. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, under finance.
Thanks, Tony. How about the Housing Committee? Any report? From Deanna.
I have no report.
Okay. Parking Committee report? Any
I don't
action?
No action the past month. I think we have a meeting coming up in November.
And Communications?
I have no report to share.
And the Job Committee?
The only thing that I have to report is IgniteCDA, which I've talked about before, continues to be a giant success story, and they recently completed a 75,000 square foot expansion of their facility that's just off of Hanley and 95. Added 200 more jobs. They're up to approximately 800 jobs when they started with 50, with room for more. So that is really a growing concern, and has added a lot of jobs just within the last couple of years to our community. So they're a great company doing great things. So I just wanted to add that.
That's nice. Nice. Now the Executive Director's report.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few things to share with the board, and the first one regarding the 823 North 4th Street property discussion of draft purchase and sale agreement. I will share with you from the podium.
Okay. Get yourself in trouble.
First off, I just wanted to kind of give a background to everybody on this issue and just kind of show you the footprint that exists in Midtown for the ownership between IgniteCDA and the housing company. So the housing company currently owns the real estate shaded in blue, which is this building here. The agency owns these bare lots. The agency owns the Paris Flea Market building, and the agency owns these parking lots up here. So at the August 26th board meeting, Gerald Hunter, president of Idaho Housing and Finance Association, shared that the association would be willing to acquire the Paris Flea Market building property, which once again is right there, from the agency through a purchase and sale agreement. So a little further background on this issue. Beginning in 2007, IHFA and IgniteCDA started working on a proposed mixed-use workforce housing project in the Midtown area of Coeur d'Alene on the footprint you see here. The housing company was bought in to act as a developer for the mixed-use project on the 800 block of 4th Street. At that time, the Idaho Youth Ranch was operating out of the building at 811 4th Street, which is this building right here. IgniteCDA owned the vacant land at 813 and 8 to 821 4th Street, which is this area right here. And the old Ponderosa Motors building had been listed for sale, which is this building right here. In 2008, the housing company negotiated with Idaho Youth Ranch to move their operations to the Ponderosa Motors building in exchange for their property at 811 North 4th Street. So back then, the Youth Ranch moved from this building to this building, and the housing company acquired this fee asset. IgniteCDA participated in the acquisition of the old Ponderosa Motors property by acquiring the 2 parking lots associated with the property sale. So at that time, Ignite picked up this parking lot and this parking lot. These 2 parking lots were to be used for public parking for the Midtown area. All parties agreed that if the Paris Flea Market property, which is this building right here, was acquired, that it would greatly enhance the proposed mixed-use project. The housing company began negotiations with the owners of the 823 North 4th Street property at that time. In 2009, the housing company entered into a purchase and sale agreement for the Paris Flea Market building. The sale price was $325,000. Acquisition of the property was contingent upon IgniteCDA board's approval of the acquisition concept. During the time frame of December 2009 to March 2010, IgniteCDA and the housing company entered into an agreement whereby IgniteCDA would acquire the 823 North 4th Street property, which is once again the Gagnon property right here, for $100,000, and the housing company would retain an improvement value of $225,000. It was felt at this time that IgniteCDA should own both the land and buildings on the property, since IgniteCDA would be the entity that prepared the site, in other words, demolition and site remediation of the property, for the proposed mixed-use workforce housing project. The agreement stated that if for any reason IgniteCDA wanted to dispose of the property, it would first offer the property back to the housing company for the agency's initial investment acquisition of $100,000. At this time, IgniteCDA, IHFA, and the housing company understood that there was an agreement in concept that this property transaction, as well as the other components of the proposed development, was a joint effort, and that since IHFA and the housing company had contributed $225,000 for the acquisition of the 823 North 4th Street property, and IgniteCDA had contributed $100,000 for the property, that if either party wanted to cause a termination of the proposed development, that one party would pay the other party the amount it had paid for the transaction. In early 2012, neighborhood opposition to the proposed mixed-use project grew, and it was becoming clear that the mixed-use workforce housing project may not take place. The proposed mixed-use project has been placed on hold since that time. So that gives you kind of a background of kind of where we are today. And as Mr. Hunter shared at the August board meeting, IHFA made an offer that they would be willing to purchase the Paris Flea Market from the IgniteCDA. And so at that time, I went ahead and drafted up a purchase and sale agreement that I shared with IHFA and I shared with the board to kind of continue the conversation about what we want to do with that property asset. And that's where we stand today. Be happy to answer any other questions you have.
You have to remember how much during that exchange where and it's been a while, when IHFA traded the old Youth Ranch building and we bought the parking lots. How much of that did we pay?
We paid let me check my paperwork here. So I get it right. We paid $358,000 for the parking lots.
Both of them.
For both of them.
And do you remember the purchase and sale price of that building?
I don't.
I remember we looked at it at one time personally, and it was under $700,000. So IHFA, did they buy the Youth Ranch building for $500,000 and then they traded it? Was that kind of the numbers?
They bought the Ponderosa Motors building for the net amount that that minus 328,000 that we.
And then they just traded
They made
so
a deal.
potentially they were into it, maybe 350, 400 at the most.
The housing company shared that they are into the Midtown Initiative for about $830,000
Some of that total is for architectural work and site studies and so on.
Design.
Actual land cost, do we have those numbers?
I don't have that number, actual land cost.
It would be interesting to know, I think. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. It would be good to know that. Tony, do you know what the current assessed value is on the Paris Flea Market building?
I do not know.
Look it up.
Chairman? I'm clear on this. What's going on with the land between the Paris Flea Market and the old Youth Ranch or Sears Catalog store there?
Grass and weeds, right?
Yeah. So does that,
We own the property.
right, along with the Paris Flea Market,
Correct.
but in this proposal with IHFA, what happens to the land in between?
It stays in our ownership.
Okay.
All that we were talking about to now is potential sale of the Paris Flea Market building and land.
Right, so it's still on land in between?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I wondered.
The main issue, as I tried to point out, is that the improvement value that the IHFA and the housing company has placed into the project at that time was the intent that they were going to partner with us to do this workforce housing project. So they put that $225,000 into the project concept, that initiative. And then when everything fell apart, they have kind of $225,000 sitting in kind of no man's land as that project will not move forward now. But it was their effort at the time, their good faith effort at the time, that they put money into the project.
As I recall, part of that conversation, and I could be wrong, excuse me for my voice, it's a little raggedy right now, but part of the discussion was that we would probably end up assisting IHFA to the tune about that amount if they built the project in terms of site work and such that we would be involved in. Do you recall that conversation?
There was many conversations on that front. We never really settled on a final number because the project never materialized. But they were seeking additional assistance from the agency for project-related expenditures.
Demolition, cleanup.
Site remediation, public right-of-way improvements. There was all kinds of conversation as they were applying for the federal tax credits.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor?
I just have a little bit of a different thought process in that I remember Gerald talking about that, and he said also that they would entertain any offers at a fair market value price for property that they may own. And he did say that their plan would be to liquidate any assets that they had there anyway. So I might want to take a look at it to see, we do have the bare land there, we do own the parking lots, that it may be of our best interest if we're going to plan over the next few years to do something there that we hang on to that. And if there's a financial amount that is owed to the housing company, that we figure that out, and maybe it's the other way around. Maybe instead of a purchase and sale agreement from the agency to them, we look at controlling that whole entire asset there. That's just another thought process.
Mr. Chairman, I talked to Gerald Hunter about that, and they'd be happy either way. They'd be happy to acquire that property, or they'd be happy to follow Commissioner Whitmire's proposal.
Dan?
To me, as you look at that plat, it makes no sense for us to split our properties. And that's actually what we would be doing. We've got property here and we got property here. Why would we sell the middle of it? It doesn't make sense. So I kind of agree with Steve. Let's talk to Idaho Housing and see if we can maybe negotiate the other direction. It makes no sense to me to sell it when you've got property on both sides of it, that you're basically limiting your ability to do anything in the future with that property.
Well,
I don't think a developer would do that. And whereas we may see in the future an opportunity come along there, whether it's with the Modern Theater Group or something else. By giving up our control of that piece, we are giving up, I think, I don't think, it doesn't make sense to me to do it. I think it makes a lot more sense for us to just hang on to the property and work a deal with IFHA so that we don't have any obligations. I believe we should always, in my opinion, and maybe it's just a personal thing, we made an agreement. I think you stick by the agreement, period. I don't think you walk away from an agreement, whether it's an agreement in contractual terms or not. I think you have to figure out the best way to do something that's appropriate. But I don't think you walk away from an agreement. It's just not the way I like to do business.
Thanks. Danny?
Mr. Chairman, and Deanna, on that point, I do think a lot of times past, I think it would be prudent to go back and review all of those writings.
I think so too.
And to Mr. Lyon's point, that does deserve careful analysis, and I think we have to be careful, whatever we do, that we, remain lawful. And so, before we take any further actions, I'd like to spend some time looking at all that.
Well, I think as Danny was saying, right now it's kind of
I would agree.
sticky little, and we should maybe send it back to the land subcommittee, acquisition subcommittee, and have them do some research.
What's the board's pleasure?
Brad?
I'm just going to say I didn't want to say anything and sound dumb, but I was sitting here wondering what this gains us to split our property, and then Deanna raised the question, and I'm just still studying and contemplating it, but I just...
Well, the premise for Mr. Hunter was that with the current agreement, kind of on hold right now between IHFA and the housing company, IgniteCDA, on this modern theater initiative, it doesn't matter who owns the property. If all the property is going to go to the proposed initiative, the Performing Arts Center, all of that would be, that whole footprint would be owned by Modern Theater. So if that were to go on, it doesn't matter who owns the property. If it doesn't go anywhere, then you kind of get into this ownership issue that we have with that Paris flea market. And that's why this conversation is timely.
Well, it is timely, and I don't have any way to make what the odds are on the Modern Theater project going together. It's great. It would be a nice thing in Midtown, but I don't know what the odds are on that going together. So I share Deanna's concern about splitting the property up right now. So I think that's a great idea to put it back to the real estate committee.
Do you remember what is the agreement then for the parking spaces for the youth ranch? I mean, if that's our property to develop, do we have to leave that as a parking for public parking?
Well, the board's commitment at this time is to keep that as public parking. That is kind of what the board decided to do when they acquired that, is to kind of keep it public parking and associated with that proposed project at that time. So it remains as public parking to date, but the board can choose to do something different if they like.
It seems like if nothing's going to go forward with Idaho Housing, and maybe the theater project will work, maybe it won't, but there's something that should go there. So it seems like we either should be out of there or we should have the whole thing maybe and see how motivated Idaho Housing is to divest themselves of it. But I think I'm agreeing with what the mayor said. I'm thinking probably it's better if we control that whole thing. But I definitely get worried about splitting our property up there if that theater project doesn't work out.
What's the status of the theater project?
The draft MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, has been shared with the Modern Theater Group. I heard today from one of the board members that the board has reviewed it, and they are engaging external expertise to review the draft MOU, and hopefully will get back to us with their feedback in the next couple of weeks.
Is there a date on that letter when they have to get back to us? So we don't...
No, there's not a date on when they have to get back to us, but there's metrics in the MOU that they would have to perform once the MOU is executed. But I got the impression that they were going to respond sooner than later. So
I'm imagining a Fairfield in there. That's probably not practical.
A skinny one.
Yeah, skinny Fairfield in. Yeah.
Additional comment?
Mr. Lyons was correct. It's 187,140 is the current
The assessed
assessment.
value. Okay.
So what's the pleasure of the board?
Do we need a motion on what to do with it, or just?
Is there direction for me
Just-
to pursue?
yeah.
What would you like to do?
I'd like
I
to
would
see-
like to see it go back to whether it's the acquisition committee or whatever, and like to take a look at all the documentation.
Look at the
myself.
documentation and,
Look it over again.
Yeah, I didn't know if this is acquisition committee, or I think I'm on acquisition committee. Or then there was the committee studying the
Property.
disposition of, whatever we called that committee, the disposition of all our excess properties. So I don't know which committee we're thinking.
I think the
Some-
whole board should be involved in that.
Some
but
committee should study
I do
it.
think the acquisition committee would be the ones to
do the legwork.
initially review it, and finance committee, but then that basically you're talking about almost the entire board. So I think this is something that we all need to be involved in. I don't think it's,
Well, yeah, the acquisition committee would just gather the data and bring it back to the board, definitely, yeah.
that's,
And then the timing of the MOU, and we'll know what the Modern Theater has in mind then, and move forward at that time.
Is this more acquisition than it is disposition?
Could be either.
Yeah. Well, we have to acquire it before we can dispose of it, so,
Well, that's true.
kind of
Would
in
be
limbo
That's
now.
true. Would be, yeah, part of it's disposition and part of it would be acquisition from Idaho Housing. So, yeah,
okay,
either way, sure.
thanks.
So acquisition committee?
Yep.
Okay.
Quickly, as quick as possible. Who's on that, anyway?
I don't know. Yeah, there's me. Is there anyone else on it?
Just you. Report back.
Get her done.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll try and get back to you in the morning on that. Yeah.
Okay, the next item I have is just to share with everybody that there's a City Council IgniteCDA Board Workshop that's scheduled for October 28th at noon in this room right here, the community room in the library.
Mhm.
And also for initiative updates, as Brad was saying, we have the property working group that has met, and they've directed me to kind of work on how we're going to potentially dispose of the property that we own on Young Avenue behind City Hall and over there on North Park Drive properties, and we've met. They directed me to visit with the City Planning Department to kind of get their insight as to the concepts that were developed for those properties by our outside planning consultants. I met with Hillary and her team, had some great insight, so I plan to bring those insights back to the working group, the property working group, gather those folks again and to continue the conversation so they can bring the discussion to the full board here in the near future. So that'll be happening pretty quick. And finally, I just wanted to kind of share with you an update on our tactical goals for this past fiscal year as well as the next fiscal year. So I don't know if I sent you a copy of this via email, but I have a copy for you here if you want that. I just handed out FY16, and just so you have them, here's FY17. Once again, I'll go to the podium here. So for fiscal year 2016, as we chatted at the last quarter, I think the board did pretty well on their tactical goals. And once again, the tactical goals are the annual goals that help the board achieve the longer-term strategic goals for the two districts. The only change we made for fiscal 2016 is that we tabled the healthcare job exploration initiative until we kind of can further define where that initiative might be going with our potential partners. And then if we look forward to fiscal year 2017, we have some of the same goals that kind of rolled over from fiscal year 2016 and some new goals, but it's still focused on the same strategic initiatives that are outlined there with public space, communication, the higher education corridor, finance, parking, housing, and jobs. These were the tactical goals that the board formed at their April strategic planning session. Entertain any questions you might have?
Tony?
Thank you, Tony.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Not directly related, but sort of related to right-of-way acquisitions. I understand that the Union Pacific right-of-way in the Riverstone area is now back on the market, that the offer has expired.
That's my understanding, yes.
I hadn't heard. Guess I can look it up.
Anything further on
Mr.
that?
Chairman, that's all I have.
How about board commissioner comments?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Mayor?
I don't normally have a wide variety of pink shirts, but now I have 5 of them because I joined a challenge from the American Cancer Society out of Spokane for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is this month. And so I just wanted to make everybody aware. It's a great cause. I'm in a little bit of a competition with 6 or 7 people from Spokane to see how much money we can raise for that. I'm currently in second place. I don't take finishing second very well, so I'm recruiting more folks to do that. But it's a great cause, and so October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and very important that we make sure that everyone gets screened.
Thank you very much for that.
So, Mr. Mayor, question? How does the competition work? How's the money getting raised?
It's online that someone could go, and I don't know exactly the search. I would imagine you go through Spokane, through the Spokane American Cancer Society, and there are 6 of us listed there. And if you would like to donate to mine, you click on that. Or someone could also deliver a check to City Hall made out to the American Cancer Society, and I could deliver it to be credited to my account to the appropriate spot.
Very good.
So that's how.
So you don't just take cash then?
I would provide a receipt too, but I'll
Okay.
take anything I can get.
Other board comments? I'd like to share that I was at the city council meeting before last night, and they were talking about the parking lot next to the memorial field. Can we talk about that at all and the status of that, or?
Yes, that's one of the issues I visited with Hillary and her team on. The status is that apparently the city has approved the agreement with the county, and that it's all set to come to fruition next summer with construction schedule. Is that about right, Mr. Mayor?
Right, and we, as you know, in that whole plan, there was some additional parking that was planned. The parking that was planned was further north. We began some conversations with the county as they have some parking needs, and we negotiated that they would pay for the building of the parking lot. It was moved to a little bit to the south to line up better with Garden Avenue. There's going to be a crossing right there. So the county has committed $1.3 million to build that parking, and it would be great if we could put some type of program together to develop that all at once. You know, that's a continuation of the Four Corners plan with the skateboard park. There's a picnic shelter and some restrooms there, some sport courts, and so there are some pieces that are moving that I know the Tonys had some conversations with the designer of that, Welsh Comer, and that hopefully over the next few months those pieces can be put together, and that project has the potential to be finished out possibly next year. But there are some things that need to be accomplished, and it's looking very positive. Before, we would have had, without the county's participation, we would have had to build the parking lot. Now, with their participation, they are building the parking lot, and then there could be other funds that are available to do the other amenities that are going in that. As well, we're in the process of applying for a grant, working with the skate park folks to apply for a grant for some of that construction too. So there's a lot of real positive things that are moving in that area.
It was exciting to hear about that, and the whole Four Corners conceptual plan might have to change a little tiny bit, but the getting out into public comment again with Welch Comer doing that, and none of the amenities will be removed, just change the location because of where the parking lot's going to be. So that all sounded really neat.
Right. So all of the features of the approved plan are still there. They're just maneuvered a little differently.
And which might change our property that we own there just a little bit, because we have to donate a piece to get a piece. So it's exciting to see it coming together, a plan coming together. It's neat. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Brad?
Say, just real briefly, does anybody, such as the mayor, have an update on the carousel? on the timetable for that? It's nice to see that building going up.
It is nice to see.
Yeah, realistically, we're the first rider will probably be this spring.
Okay.
So they're moving along and completing all of what they're needing to do now. But I would say springtime is the first time that you get to ride it.
That'd be great to have a grand opening in the spring.
Yes.
That would be.
Thank you.
So now at this time, we would take our second round of public comment.
Thank you. Just to
Thank you.
respond to several factual inaccuracies by Mr. Burns. The right of first refusal agreement does not specify a $100,000 price. It does not specify any price. It merely says that if you get an offer to buy from somebody other than the city, you have to tell the housing company about it, send them a copy, and they have so many days to match it. It does not specify $100,000 or any price. The right of first refusal agreement did say that it becomes, quote, null and void, unquote, if, among other things, that housing project that was contemplated at the time was not built there by December 31, 2012. At the time, no doubt, people thought that would happen. In fact, it did not. So the right of first refusal agreement became null and void on January 1, 2013. The last two items recorded for the flea market property, Lot 7 in Block 6 of Russell's Addition, are the 2010 warranty deed and right of first refusal agreement. Nothing subsequent to that. And whatever oral agreements Mr. Burns may have thought he entered into with the housing company, if they're not in writing, they're meaningless. You are fiduciaries, we are told. That means you have a legal duty to act prudently and solely in the interest of the public, not the interest of IHFA. I would encourage you to take that duty, which we have been told you have, seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment?
I'd just like to make a clarification. Tony did not enter into that agreement on his own. There was board, so we
Board
can't really
action
say
on that.
Mr. Burns entered into the agreement. Mr. Burns entered into the agreement with the agreement of members of the board.
Correct.
So just a clarification, please.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to go to executive session.
So move.
Moved and seconded
I think the code section.
for
read.
Idaho Code Section 74-206.
Second. Subsection 1C.
Thank you.
You attorneys.
Lander,
Yes.
Whitmire,
Yes.
Metz,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Hoskins,
Yes.
Davis.
Aye.